I didn't even hear the key turn in the lock. One moment, I was sitting in the dark, staring at the crumpled eviction notice on the table. The next, my landlord was standing in the doorway. His shadow stretched across my tiny living room, his presence filling the space like he owned more than just the walls around me. And then, behind him, another figure appeared. Taller, broader, a stranger, but not for long. "Are you ready to talk about your rent?" he asked, his voice low, deliberate, too calm for the storm I felt rising inside me. I froze. My heart slammed against my ribs because I knew what talk really meant. He had made his terms clear. He had made the rules, and worse, I had agreed to listen. But I wasn't prepared for this. I wasn't prepared for him to bring someone else. The landlord stepped closer, his eyes fixed on me like he could read every thought, every fear, every hidden desire I'd tried so hard to bury. The stranger leaned against the wall, silent, but his stare was heavier than words. In that instant, I realized my life, my body, my choices, none of them were safe anymore. And yet, deep down, a part of me didn't want to run. My name is Clara, and this story isn't one I ever thought I'd tell. I'm not proud of it. I'm not ashamed either. It just happened, and it changed everything. I'm a single mother of 2. My daughter is 8. My son just turned 5. They're my whole world. Their laughter is the only thing that keeps me going some days. But raising them alone? It's like running a race with no finish line, and the track just keeps getting longer. Their father, my ex, walked out on us without a second thought. No child support, no phone calls, no birthday cards, nothing. Just me and them, and a mountain of responsibilities. I worked every job I could get my hands on. Waitressing until midnight, cleaning offices before dawn, babysitting kids that weren't mine when I should have been home with my own. I stretched every dollar, skipped meals so they could eat, smiled at them when I wanted to cry. But no matter how much I fought, the bills didn't care. They kept coming. Rent was the worst of all. My apartment wasn't even nice. It was old, small, peeling walls, leaky faucet. But it was safe. It was home, and I was willing to sacrifice anything to keep it. Then, 3 months ago, the landlord raised the rent. Just a little at first. But with prices of food and school fees climbing, that little was enough to break me. Each month I fell further behind, until I was staring at an eviction notice taped to my door. That's when he started watching me differently. At first it was subtle, his eyes lingering too long when I opened the door, his smile a little too warm, his voice softer, as if he knew my weakness. Then came the questions, personal ones. How are the kids? You managing all right? You look so tired. And then, the suggestion. His tone shifted, casual but sharp, like he'd rehearsed it in his head 100 times. Maybe there's another way we can work this out, a private arrangement, just between us. I laughed it off. I told him no, but deep down fear was already sinking its claws into me, because I knew what he meant. And worse, I knew that if it came down to losing my children's home or losing my pride, I might not have a choice. I told myself it would never get that far, that somehow I'd find the money, that some miracle would happen before the deadline. But miracles don't pay rent, and so here I was, backed into a corner, clutching at excuses I didn't believe in anymore. I thought the worst that could happen was giving in to him. But the night he showed up, the night he brought someone else with him, that was when I realized I had stepped into something far darker than I ever imagined. And once it started, there was no turning back. The first time my landlord hinted at his arrangement, I laughed nervously, trying to brush it off like I misunderstood. But I hadn't. I knew exactly what he meant. From that moment, something shifted between us. He stopped being just a landlord. He became a presence, a shadow lingering at the edges of my life. Every time I saw him, there was something in his eyes, something that made my stomach twist. Not anger, not cruelty, something worse, expectation, like he was waiting for me to break. He started showing up more often. At first, it was under the excuse of maintenance, a dripping faucet, a squeaky door, a light bulb that needed changing. But each visit lasted longer than it should have. He'd stand too close in the doorway, his arm brushing against mine as if by accident. He'd let his gaze linger, not on my face, but on the hollow of my neck, the curve of my shoulder. I tried to ignore it. I tried to act like it didn't rattle me, but it did. Because no matter how much I hated admitting it, part of me noticed him too, and that terrified me more than anything. At night, when the kids were asleep, I'd catch myself replaying our conversations in my head, the way his voice dropped low when he asked how I was holding up, the way he smiled when he caught me staring too long. It wasn't right. It wasn't what I wanted. But loneliness plays tricks on you. When you've gone years without feeling wanted, even danger starts to look like comfort. Then came the day he made it clear. I had exactly 2 weeks before eviction. He stood in my doorway, holding the notice in his hand like it was a weapon. "Clara," he said softly, almost kindly, "you're out of time. Unless you're ready to talk." My throat went dry. My hand shook as I took the paper from him. His eyes searched mine, waiting for the answer he already thought he owned. And in that moment, I realized he wasn't asking anymore. He was setting the rules. I told myself I'd find a way, that maybe I could borrow money, take another job, beg for an extension. But deep down, I knew I was cornered. And when a woman is cornered, she makes choices she swore she never would. But what unsettled me most wasn't just him, it was the way he hinted, subtly, almost casually, that he wasn't the only one who knew about my situation. That others might be interested too. At the time, I didn't understand what he meant. I didn't want to. But later, when he brought that stranger into my home, I realized this was never just between us. This was a game, and I had become the prize. The days that followed felt like a countdown. Every time I looked at the calendar, the red circle around the eviction date grew darker in my mind, like it was pulsing, waiting, watching. My landlord didn't press me outright at first. He didn't need to. He knew he had me. Instead, he started showing up in ways that were harder to refuse. Groceries left at my door, money for repairs slipped under the mat, casual visits that ended with him standing too close, his hand brushing against mine as he passed me a bill, his eyes never leaving my face. He was testing me, pushing me, and I hated how my body betrayed me in those moments, because no matter how much I told myself this was wrong, no matter how much I reminded myself that he was using my desperation, I couldn't deny the way my chest tightened when he leaned in, the way my breath quickened when his hand lingered a second too long. Loneliness is a dangerous thing. It eats at you. It whispers in your ear late at night, telling you to accept comfort, even when it comes from the wrong hands. One evening, after the kids were asleep, there was a knock at the door. I opened it to find him standing there, holding 2 bags of takeout. "You've been working too hard," he said, stepping past me before I could even answer. "Let me take care of dinner." I should have sent him away. I should have said no, but instead, I found myself sitting across from him at my kitchen table, the dim light casting shadows across his face. He asked about my children, about my past, about me. And for the first time in years, someone was listening. I laughed at one of his jokes. He smiled, leaning back, his gaze locked on me. And that's when I felt it, this pull, this shift I couldn't explain, a dangerous warmth settling in the pit of my stomach. When he left that night, his hand brushed mine at the door. He held it a beat too long, his thumb grazing my skin, and even after the door closed, I stood there trembling, knowing something inside me had cracked. And then, the night everything changed. I had just tucked the kids into bed when I heard the knock again. My stomach tightened because I knew it was him. But when I opened the door, my heart nearly stopped. He wasn't alone. A man I'd never seen before stood beside him, taller, broader, his eyes dark and unreadable. My landlord introduced him with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "This is Daniel. He's a close friend." I froze, clutching the doorframe. Why was he here? Why bring someone else? My landlord's smile widened, as if he could hear the questions pounding in my head. "Don't worry, Clara," he said smoothly. "Daniel's here because he understands our arrangement." My chest constricted, my knees nearly buckled. Arrangement? No, this wasn't what I agreed to. This wasn't what I thought was happening. Daniel stepped closer, his gaze scanning me slowly, deliberately, like I was something to be measured, weighed, judged. My breath caught in my throat, but I couldn't move. That's when I realized the truth. This wasn't just between me and my landlord anymore. He had opened a door I couldn't close. And standing there between them, trapped in the silence of my tiny apartment, I understood. Whatever happened next, I would never be the same. The silence in the room was suffocating. My landlord leaned casually against the wall, arms folded, like he was in control of everything. Daniel, the stranger, stood just a few feet away, his presence heavier than the air itself. I wanted to scream, to tell them both to leave, to slam the door and protect what little dignity I had left, but my body wouldn't move. My voice was gone. It was my landlord who broke the silence. "Clara," he said softly, his tone almost gentle, "I told you we'd find a way to make this work. You don't have to be afraid. You're safe with us." Safe. The word twisted like a knife in my chest. Safe didn't look like this. Safe didn't feel like the way Daniel's eyes were traveling over me, steady and unblinking. I could feel my pulse racing in my throat, my breath shallow and uneven. Daniel stepped closer, just a step, but enough to make my knees tremble. My landlord didn't stop him. In fact, he watched, closely, almost amused, as if this was all part of his design. "She's nervous," Daniel finally spoke, his voice deep, calm, certain. "She should be," my landlord replied, "but she knows why we're here. Don't you, Clara?" My name on his lips felt like a chain tightening around me. I swallowed hard, unable to answer, my silence speaking louder than words ever could. Then Daniel reached out, not touching me, not yet, but close enough that the heat of his hand made the space between us electric. My heart thundered, and for one dizzy moment, I wasn't sure if it was fear or something darker pulling me in. "She wants this," Daniel said quietly, almost to himself. My landlord smirked, his eyes locked on mine. "She does," and in that moment I realized something terrifying. They weren't forcing me, not really. What terrified me most was that part of me, some desperate, lonely part I didn't want to admit existed, wasn't fighting as hard as I thought I would. My landlord's voice cut through my spiral. "Clara, say the word and we'll leave, but if you don't, then this is the point of no return." The room spun. My chest tightened. Every instinct screamed at me to run, to scream, to end this before it consumed me. But I didn't move. I didn't speak. And in that heavy, electric silence, my choice was already made. After that night, nothing in my life felt the same. I woke up the next morning, sunlight spilling through the curtains, my children laughing in the next room as if the world hadn't shifted beneath my feet. But I knew. I felt it in the way my hands shook making breakfast, in the way my reflection stared back at me in the bathroom mirror, eyes darker, lips trembling, like I was staring at a stranger. I told myself it was just one night, a mistake, something I could bury, forget, lock away in the shadows of my memory. But when I checked my phone, there was already a message. From him, from them, just 4 words, "We'll talk tonight." My stomach dropped. I tried to convince myself I imagined it, that maybe I'd misread the situation, that maybe I still had a way out. But deep down, I knew. This wasn't over. It was only beginning. Days blurred into weeks. My landlord no longer knocked politely. He walked in like he owned more than just the apartment. Daniel started appearing too, always silent at first, always watching, like he was studying me, waiting to see how far I'd go. And the most terrifying part? I stopped resisting, not completely, not all at once. But piece by piece, I felt myself changing. The fear that once paralyzed me turned into something else. Something darker. Something that whispered to me at night when I should have been sleeping. I knew what people would say if they found out. That I was weak. That I was foolish. That I had traded my pride for comfort, for safety, for attention. But the truth was so much more complicated. Because somewhere between the threats and the promises, between the silence and the stares, I stopped knowing where fear ended and desire began. And then came the moment I'll never forget. I opened the door one evening, expecting only him, but when I looked up, both of them were standing there, waiting, smiling, and my heart didn't sink. It raced. That's when I realized I wasn't the same Clara anymore, but the question is, am I trapped, Or have I finally found something I was searching for all along? You tell me. That's my story, or at least the beginning of it. And now I'm left wondering, was I pushed into a corner, or did I step into something I secretly wanted all along? What do you think? If you were in my place, desperate, cornered, with 2 little ones depending on you, would you have made a different choice? Tell me in the comments. I want to know, and if you want to hear the rest of what happened, how far things went, and how deep I let myself fall, make sure you subscribe, because this is only the start.